The Boys has made many changes in the adaptation of the comic of the same name, with their decision to seemingly spare one major character his original fate, setting him up for a more important role in the show's final season. While The Boys follows the same broad strokes as the comic of the same name, the show has introduced plenty of wrinkles to the story. Background soups like Stormfront and Soldier Boy were heavily reimagined, original characters like Ryan have become integral to the plot, and certain characters have gotten entirely different arcs from their comics counterparts. This is perhaps most notable with the Seven and Homelander Soup Army, who have been incredibly fleshed out compared to their original forms. Characters like the Deep barely resemble the version who appeared in the comics. The show has afforded some great moral complexity to a few of them, one of whom is still active but on the run by the end of Season 4. This means he's likely escaped his original fate from the comics, and could easily return in Season 5 as a vital wildcard in the Boys' endgame. After 3 seasons of being a conflicted antagonist, A-Train's redemption story in Season 4 of The Boys set him up to become Season 5's best wildcard. As in the original comic series by Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson, A-Train was a super speedster member of the Seven whose accidental murder of Huey's girlfriend Robin set him up to join the Boys. However, the show takes time to explore his conflicted morality and internal fears. Season 4 underscored A-Train's moral dilemma by making him an unlikely ally to the Boys. He worked with them, saved Huey, and risked his life to undermine Homelander's agenda. After saving Butcher and Starlight, A-Train went on the run so he could avoid Homelander's wrath. This leaves him capable of appearing in Season 5 at any point, potentially continuing, or derailing, his redemption arc. He could become a key player in the resistance against Homelander, with his knowledge about Vought making him a dangerous source of information. He could also backslide in light of Homelander's ascension, attempting to return to the fold and resuming villainous acts. It's a far cry from the A-Train of the Boys comic, who was a far more one-note character. The aggressive speedster was a basic villainous soup, whose predatory connection to Starlight was given to the Deep in the Prime Video show. Comics A-Train didn't receive anywhere near his TV counterpart's complexity and never betrayed the Seven. Notably, the relationship between A-Train and Huey was far different between the original and the adaptation. In Season 4, Huey finally forgives A-Train for his past actions and the pair shake hands, with Huey admitting he did it more for himself so he could past his hatred. It's a surprisingly mature and heartwarming moment, and very different from their last confrontation in the comic. In The Boys number 63, Butcher captured A-Train and brought him to Huey in a bid to reinvigorate him for the team. After listening to recordings of A-Train brushing off Robin's death and making crude comments about Starlight, Huey gave into his rage and punted his head off. It was a brutal conclusion of their feud in the comics, and one that seems highly unlikely to take place in the show, especially after the pair settled their feud in Wisdom of the Ages. A-Train is one of the big lingering threads of The Boys Season 4, and his potential involvement in the show's endgame seems like a foregone conclusion. His arc throughout The Boys has been consistent with the show's overarching introspection on morality and power. Similar to Ryan, A-Train struggles to balance his sense of self with his role as a superhuman hero, play into the overall themes of the show. Bringing the character back could allow the show to further explore redemption, which was a key theme of Season 4. A-Train's story doesn't feel concluded, and it plays too well into the show's overall themes to be left unresolved. A-Train's presence could be a key turning point in Season 5, giving Starlight an important ally to rely upon now that Butcher has gone rogue and the rest of the Boys have been captured. A-Train has likely avoided his final fate in the comics at Huey's hands, but his true redemption could still result in his death if Homelander gets his hands on him. All of this makes A-Train one of the most compelling wildcards going into The Boys. After dropping hints throughout its 8-episode run, The Boys Season 4 finally confirms that Butcher is a soup during its finale, and his powers are both impressive and disturbing. The Boys Season 4 opens with Butcher dying of cancer, the result of overusing Temp V during Season 3. However, as his symptoms progress, it becomes clear that something else is going on with the Boys' former leader. His encounter with Ezekiel in The Boys Season 4, Episode 4 is the first major clue that Butcher has unrealized powers, but it's far from the only hint the show drops. In the same episode that he kills Ezekiel, Butcher admits to taking Compound V after his diagnosis at the end of The Boys Season 3. He initially believes it didn't do anything, but the truth starts to unravel once he inexplicably rips Ezekiel to pieces. The Boys Season 4's Big Joe Kessler twist further hints that Butcher is a soup, and that's not to mention the more subtle teases that appear when the team heads to Victoria Newman's lab. The whole season builds to the twist that Butcher is a soup, and a few scenes allude to his shocking power. This is why Butcher is no longer on his deathbed as Season 4 comes to a close, and he's in good spirits as he drives off during the final scene. He may still have cancer, but being a soup will likely expand his lifespan long enough to take on Homelander. It's hard to say how Compound V affects Butcher's body, as his powers are also impacted by his Temp V use. Only The Boys Season 5 can confirm if Butcher will stay this way, but Season 4's ending suggests this is the case. There are questions about whether Butcher's powers will stick around if he turns on Kessler. It's possible Butcher could lose control of his tumorous tentacles if he embraces his visions of Becca and the humanity they represent. But with Butcher pushing further into villain territory heading into The Boys Season 5, he may not need to worry about that. Butcher's already lost hope when it comes to Ryan, so it will be difficult to get him back on board with the promise he made Becca. While Compound V appears to have made Butcher a full-fledged soup, his power seems to be influenced by his use of Temp V throughout The Boys Season 3. This is why his tumorous tentacles resemble those exhibited by the dying rabbit from Newman's lab. The Boys Season 4, Episode 5 makes a point of showing what the rabbit was injected with before killing it off. Its tentacles emerge because it's given Temp V, just like Butcher. That's why the Amazon show draws a connection between Carl Urban's character and the animal. Unlike the rabbit, Butcher doesn't die from this effect of Temp V. This is probably the Compound V working, meshing with the other substance to grant Butcher powers that are both grotesque and permanent. The powers themselves are less flashy than the ones Compound V often grants, and that's probably because of how detrimental Temp V is to the body. When Butcher was healthy and took Temp V, he attained laser vision like Homelander. Now that Temp V is killing him, his power is more representative of that. Butcher's tentacles may be grotesque in The Boys Season 4, but the finale proves that they're also a huge asset in the fight against Homelander. The boys struggle to kill soups throughout the series, as their strongest enemies seem invincible. Bullets don't kill Newman, and villains like the Deep and Black Noir don't stay down after being beaten. The fact that Butcher's tentacles are strong enough to rip Newman in half during The Boys Season 4 finale speaks volumes about their strength. They're an effective weapon, even against incredibly powerful soups. Whether Butcher's tumorous tentacles can take on the strongest soups is another story. Homelander and Soldier Boy are sure to test the limits of his abilities. Such characters would probably put up a fight, though Butcher has proven he can hold his own against them in the past. And armed with a vial of the deadly soup virus, Butcher certainly has a bigger arsenal heading into The Boys Season 5. Hopefully, it will help him stop the madness Homelander is unleashing, though Butcher's revenge could prove just as extreme and deadly. The status of Butcher's cancer at the end of Season 4's assassination run remains a mystery only Season 5 can answer, but the character seems far healthier. While still dealing with the implications of Kessler's continued existence, Butcher has been dealing a terminal cancer prognosis all season long. It's also been teased earlier in the season that Butcher wasn't able to access his full potential, however, except through Kessler. Kessler is a figment of Butcher's dying brain and an embodiment of the tumor, as well as an embodiment of his worst wrathful impulses. After failing to prevent a confrontation between Ryan and Mallory that turned fatal, Butcher embraced Kessler, allowing him to confront his allies with a seemingly renewed vigor. It seems that by embracing his abilities, Butcher has gained the natural endurance and strength most soups have displayed, regardless of otherwise unrelated powers. Butcher's dark side appears to be fully in charge, meaning he seems to be getting the full benefits from his power boost. However, this doesn't make him immortal. There's no indication that Butcher's newfound abilities will make him impervious to his tumor, however. Just because Butcher now has new resistance he lacked just a day ago with his powers, the cancer is still in his brain. Kessler is a literal personification of Butcher's illness. Kessler's continued presence and influence on Butcher implies the cancer is still very much within him. With that in mind, it's worth considering how this means Butcher's fatal prognosis is likely still at play. It's likely that Butcher still only has a little bit of time left before the cancer kills him, even with his newfound abilities. Just because someone has superpowers, they aren't immortal or eternal, a point reiterated frequently throughout the season in Homelander's storyline. Even with Kessler running the show, there's likely only a little bit of time left before Butcher expires. However, this does nothing to negate the danger posed by Butcher going into Season 5, and may potentially make him an even greater threat.